The galaxy's oldest beings refuse to visit Earth, and no one knows why. 400 primary reactor fields died at the exact same millisecond. High Chancellor Thraxon did not look up from his tactical display. The forward operations screen on the command deck had simply ceased its scanning cycle, freezing the digital representations of his fleet in place. No tactical warnings flashed across the terminal panels. No proximity alarms sounded. The automated diagnostic grid, which had governed every corporate vanguard action for 3,000 cycles, cleanly dropped its primary weapon feeds to zero. Thraxon pulled the manual fuel release lever at his right hand. The thick block of cast metal resisted his grip for a second, then snapped clean off at the base. A faint line of geometric microrunes flickered where the primary pressure numbers usually belonged, glowing with a soft, steady light that did not match any modern Council classification code. Across the 400 stalled capital war vessels drifting outside, the shield arrays dissolved into the cold background radiation of the empty sector. I wish I could tell you the Alliance survived what happened next. It did not. Stay close. 12 hours before the perimeter went silent, Director Cynthia Vance sat in the lower intelligence bunker of the archive spire. The air down on the substation level smelled of copper filters and the dry, scorched odor of ancient data cores. She lifted a heavy, hand-carved pad of gray shale from her desk, using a plain iron stylus to check the local transit grids. Across from her, Sergeant Cole straightened the collar of his grease-stained tactical jacket, his scarred hands resting flat against his knee plates. "The integration order is signed," Vance said. She did not check the emergency monitors. She did not call for an orbital alert. She simply tapped the shale pad against the iron rim of her desk, recording a single alignment mark on the digital log. "Thraxon is moving his primary detachment into our local shipping lane. He expects our compliance within one standard cycle." Marcus Brody's voice cut through the localized audio receiver from the monitoring platform 3 decks below. "I have the historical navigation routes verified, Director. I ran the tracking indicators back through every cycle recorded by the Firstborn since the inception of the Council." The speaker gave a dry, metallic rattle. "The older species aren't ignoring our border because they consider us underdeveloped. Whenever their automated cargo ships reach 40 light-years from our star, their navigation systems execute a hard detour. Every single vessel alters its course by exactly 12 degrees. Vance traced the geometric edge of the gray shale pad with her thumb, her face remaining entirely still as she listened. "The detour is programmed directly into their autopilot firmware," she said. "It is hard-coded into the base framework of their operating system," Brody confirmed. "They do not have a choice. Their navigation units treat our system coordinates like a physical barrier. Even during the Great Trade collapses, when they needed the shortest transport routes to save their central worlds, their armadas flew completely around our space. They are terrified of what is inside this perimeter." Vance stood up, tucking the shale pad into her coat, and walked toward the primary lift tube. "Keep the subrelays at operational standby," she said as the doors slid shut. "If Thraxon crosses the 40 light-year line, the Council will have to read its own code." The main deck of the Grand Hall was built from massive stone pillars that stretched up to a crystal ceiling, looking out onto the silent stars. High Chancellor Thraxon stood at the central podium, his hammered bronze hide catching the harsh light of the ceiling arrays. Representative species from 46 systems sat in the rising curved rows above the center floor, their voices creating a low, chaotic hum across the deck. "The human delegation has failed to submit its industrial resource registries," Thraxon announced to the assembly. His vocal register operated with a distinct mechanical click that echoed off the stone walls. "Sol has remained outside our economic network for 3 centuries. The corporate charter allows for immediate structural corrective deployment when a Tier 4 client world denies entry to our surveyors. The Vanguard fleet is already at the border. This is a minor administrative task." Vance stepped onto the center floor, her plain dark uniform contrasting sharply with the bronze institutional armor of the Kavani commander. She dropped the gray shale pad onto the central presentation table. "We are not signing the integration mandate, Chancellor," she said. "Our coordinates operate under a prior exclusion. You should review your oldest system logs before you command your captains to cross that line." Thraxon let out a short, clicking laugh. "The Council records every territory from the moment of first contact. Your Navy consists of exactly 32 dreadnought units and a small collection of defense gantries. We do not alter our deployment vectors for primitives who hide behind unverified claims." "It is not a claim," Vance said quietly. "It is an automated boundary. If your fleet moves past the detour coordinates, you will lose your ships." Matriarch Saluma intercepted the High Chancellor inside the dynamic archive vault after the assembly adjourned. The narrow chamber was chilled to maintenance temperatures, the air smelling of sweet rot and localized static electricity. Her multifaceted eyes shifted as she looked down at Thraxon's tactical pad. Chancellor, Saluma said, her ancient voice scraping like dry shale. You must recall the deployment force. The human representative spoke of the baseline restriction. You are forcing open an ancient infrastructure lock that this council did not create. Thraxon turned his bronze hide away from her, his fingers typing an override command into his fleet display. The humans are utilizing standard diplomatic bluffing techniques, Matriarch. They know their fleet numbers cannot stop our advance. Our logistical superiority is overwhelming. The integration will proceed as scheduled. He closed the display with a sharp wave of his arm. Saluma stepped closer, her fragile hands gripping the edge of an archive terminal. The first species did not draw that boundary map to isolate humanity, Chancellor. We found that perimeter when we first learned to travel between the stars. We programmed the 12-degree detour into our ships because our ancestors remembered what happened to the empires that tried to look inside. We are not their masters. We are simply the people who stayed outside the fence. Thraxon did not answer. He stepped out of the archive vault, his heavy boots echoing down the corridor as he transmitted the final mobilization signal to the Vanguard. Deep within the subterranean sublayers of the station mainframe, a system change began. An automated update routine, which had remained entirely dormant for 95 centuries, suddenly altered its status. It did not utilize modern council security protocols or encrypted administrative codes. The application ran on primitive, geometric algorithms that perfectly mirrored the physical alignment of the structural birthmark on Cynthia Vance's wrist. Across 3 uninhabited border systems, hidden beneath the crusted surfaces of empty moons, massive machinery arrays began to hum. Deep-crust industrial relays, built from dense composite metals that predated the council itself, received the synchronization ping from Cradle Point. A network of 1,200 ancient sensor nodes came online simultaneously, sending a single low-frequency vibration back through the lightspeed travel corridors. It was a standard status update. The primary Warden network was checking its perimeter seals. At the 40 light-year line, the 400 capital ships hit the boundary. On the lead flagship bridge, Thraxon watched every terminal panel transition into a single diagnostic layout. The weapons dropped, the shields dissolved, the main reactor fields died. The heavy war vessels continued to drift forward on absolute inertial momentum, entirely intact but completely empty of power, their crews staring at the unmapped space of Sol through dead viewing monitors. Vance sat back down at her desk in the low intelligence room, her hand lifting the quiet shale pad. The blue interface lines on the stone face had locked into a stable communication sync with the automated border relays. Across the quadrant, the navigation grids of every corporate world shifted their data displays, marking the entire sector in deep, permanent isolation. Saluma stood alone on her balcony, watching the silent telemetry data stream from the rim. She did not speak. She did not send an alert to the remaining systems. She simply folded her ancient hands against the silver railing of the spire, looking out into the great expanse where the first creators had once tried to build their empire. She remembered the old bedtime stories told before the council had even written its first laws, the ones about the quiet species that had locked the old gods away when they grew too dangerous to run free. The gray shale pad on Vance's desk faded back to solid stone, its surface cold and unreadable under the low bunker light. The primary terminal indicators stopped their tracking loops, leaving only a single geometric signature active on the master screen. Sol remained completely dark.